Hi, I'm Micah,
And I'm Chris.
and we've been friends for over 20 years.
Surprisingly, we haven't killed each other yet. Years ago, we started our own variety show, and it sucked.
Now that we're adults, we decided to give it another try. Like in the movie, life is like a box of donuts. You never know which one's gonna be the next one.
Wait a second, it's chocolates.
Oh, right. Okay, well, let's start the show.
This is the Doughnut Box Podcast. Well, welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Doughnut Box Podcast. We are rocking and rolling. We're in the official second week of January, man. Like, it's crazy.
You had to remember where we're
2025
at here, huh?
is here. Like, I was sitting here thinking, and we'll get into the podcast here in a little bit, but I was sitting here thinking, like, 2024, that was like a year ago. And then I'm thinking 2021, that was 4 years ago. Like, that feels like 2 years ago to me. I don't know
Well,
why.
I don't either. And then the other thing was, a little while ago, Kobe passed away. What
In
was it
2020,
like in 2020?
January of
And
2020. Yep.
I even remember when that came up, that's about to come up, and I've already been seeing some like tributes and things like that, even like beforehand. And I'm sitting here going, that's 5 years ago. Like that was 5 years ago. Like the pandemic and everything was 5 years ago. These years have been zooming. They really have. And that's kind of scary. So,
Yeah.
but
And sad news, John Cena's last year in ring, his retirement farewell tour. Goodbye. I think it'll be good. It'll be exciting to see. But
yeah,
welcome
for
to
sure.
all those who are listening or watching, because if you're listening on Spotify, you should go check us out on YouTube at the Doughnut Box Podcast. That's donut with a GH. So please go watch our faces because we'd love to see you and connect with you. But we got a free flow episode today. We love asking each other's questions. We have different topics. So, Micah, do you have a question that you just want to go ahead and just shoot from the hip?
Sure. So, one thing that I will say, I love our free flow episodes, and the reason being, especially like asking each other questions, because we've been friends for over 20 years. Like we said in the intro, we could go through the whole intro if you want to get, but no, we've been friends for over 20 years. And there are things that I find out in these questions that I'm like, man, I had no clue in 20 years about you that was even a thing, or even some stories come out. It's like, really, you did that? Like, when was this? When did this happen? And come to find out later on, oh, yep, oh, that was a thing. Like, oh, I kind of vaguely do remember that, or kind of don't. Like, it brings out some, and we find out things about each other through this podcast. It's weird.
It's always like, we were friends during that time, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me about this? And you were like, I thought I told you. And it's like, no, you never told me that story. So it's always fun to hear the stories that I don't know. So
All right, to start the theory, here's the theory that I'm going to start off with here. This is before any questions, and we're diving into a rabbit hole. I think personally, it's because we didn't have a ton of communication. Like, so when we did see each other, right, it was at church in a public setting. So some things we weren't going like, okay, here's what happened this last week or whatever, right? Or even like something that maybe the church wouldn't be too fond of, like, hey, I kissed this girl, and like in the Bilo chip aisle, like things like that. So like, things that maybe you wouldn't say. And so I think, and not just that, but for the longest time, Chris didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone. So it'd be like, you got to call from the home phone. And most of the time, his mom gonna answer, and it's like, hey, is Chris there? And so, and like all she got to do is pick up the other phone, and it's being monitored. So it's like, listen, we making sure that nothing's being told. So I think that's part of it. I think we didn't really have a ton of time to be like, hey, like, I kissed this girl in the Bilo, and have these like stupid stories. So anyways, all right, back to a regular scheduled thing here. First question here. So, and this is not to call you out, I don't have one either. We both went to college for a little bit. We went to secondary school or post-secondary school just a little bit. Have you ever thought about going back to school? And if so, are there any degrees in particular that pique your interest?
Yes. Like, I went to Bible school to get my pastor's certification. So like, that was me going back to school after I went. But like, I really thought about going back to school to get like a counseling degree. Just because like my dream job is to be a WWE chaplain. And you kind of need to like you
Yeah.
kind of need to have like marriage and family therapy, like counseling. Like I'm naturally a pretty good listener and I give pretty good advice, but like counseling teaches you how to think about different mindsets and everything like that. So I have thought about going back to get like a counseling degree. But like other than that, I'm like what would I go back to school for? Like, maybe to learn, like, a
I'm
trade? I don't know, but, like, to go for a 4-year degree? Not
not
really.
not so much. Not so
No.
much. Okay. Um, I mean, that's fair. That's
I was
fair.
gonna ask about you, but I don't know if you wanna get into, all that.
Here, give me 1 second. Can we pause? I hate to pause. We can kind of get into it. I've thought about several things, man. I've thought about like some IT things because that's where my career is right now, and then I've also thought about business. Business is kind of a blanket one. Like it's not really for like the business aspect. Like yeah, if I want to get into business or whatever, that's good. But I feel like it's a good blanket one because really wherever you go, whatever industry, like a lot of what happens in business degrees apply. So it's like okay, kind of a blanket degree. Me personally, and this is kind of an off topic thing. I know there's a lot of people who are opting out of college and going into trade schools and things like that. And I have zero problem with that. I think we have swapped in a culture, especially when we were growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, where college was everything. That was
Mhm.
everything. Like, if you didn't go to college, you were a stinking loser. Like, you couldn't do
Oh,
nothing with your life at all. And I think that our generation has come to find out, like, you can still make a good life without going to college. Like, you don't have to go into mountains of debt and do, because most people can't afford college like that. So you don't go doing, go into mountains of debt to go to college. And so it's like, I feel like a lot of people have determined, hey, I don't necessarily have to do that. I can go and do whatever. Dude, there are plumbers out there making $120,000 a year. There are HVAC guys who are making a ton. Now they might have went to technical school, but still, you could still learn those trades without going to school. So
well, I think too, like with Gen Z, and I can't wait to see what Gen Alpha comes up with for careers. But like the fact that streaming and like TikTok and social media has become such a big, like people can just sit at home and they can just make content and like they do it quicker and faster than I can. And it's like, dude, like, and they make bank, dude. Like if you are really
yeah,
good and entertaining, like they found a way to monetize it. And so, and also too, like, kinda going back to your point, I've seen so many college students who are like, "Yeah, I'm going to college," and then I'm like, "Well, what do you wanna do after college?" Unless they wanna be a lawyer or a doctor or counselor, they're like, "I'm not really sure," and then they change their major, like, 5 times, and, I know
five,
a guy
six
that
times. Yeah.
has changed his major, I'm not joking with you, 10 times. Like,
Yeah.
literally 10 times. Like,
it,
it's
it
just
doesn't
like
it doesn't surprise me at all. And then I've known a lot of other people who it might not be changing their major, but they'll just keep going back to college. Like they'll get a degree, they'll get their bachelor's, and then they'll go, ooh, I'm not ready to go into the workforce yet, let's get my master's. And then it'll be master's in something completely different. Like it'll
mhm.
be something on the other end of the spectrum. And then I've noticed a few people who are like, let's go for our doctorate. And those people, like there are some people who are legitimately like, for your career you need a doctorate. Like there is
Yeah.
no way, like doctors for instance. But at the same time, a lot of careers, yeah, you need to get ahead, but still when you're getting into that entry level things, it's not going to be like, you're not getting your money's back from going and being a doctor or like going and getting your doctorate. So a lot of it is people don't want to get out of school. Like people don't want to leave school because
That's
it's
what I was
scary
gonna
out here.
ask, like, do you think and not everybody is this way, but do you think those people, like, college is, like, their safe bubble because, like,
Absolutely.
they went from, okay, high school where, like I hate to say this, but, like, they kinda peaked in high school, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to college," and, like, "Oh, I'm afraid to get out in the real world and get a real job because mom and dad" and, like, some of these kids, like, mom and dad will be like, "As long as you're going to school, we're gonna support you, like, we will pay
Yeah.
for this and that,"
Right.
which there's nothing wrong with that, hear me, but, like, I think you're right, like, some people stay in school because they're like, "I'm afraid to get out into the real world," like and what's
Or
interesting
yeah.
is, like, the people that go straight to work, by the time they're 19 or 20, they have more experience than people who are at 26 and getting out of school, you know? And I'm not saying
Right.
that as like they're better than anybody, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. I think too, to your point about peaking in high school, I think there are some of people like that, and then I think there are some people who peak in college. Like I think
I
that is
think
a
so
thing
too.
because the thing is, some people love their college days, whether it was in their fraternity, whether it was whatever. And I think it's that first little inkling of freedom. Like some people have that freedom of high school. Okay, I got
Mm.
my first car and went out and did my stuff. Now, some people didn't have that. So you go to college, and now it's like, and not just that, but even if you did have the freedom in high school, like for myself, I necessarily didn't have a group that I fit in. You go to college, there will always be a group you fit in. Listen, if you thought you were weird in high school, there will be a group weirder than you in college. I guarantee you that. Like it is a vast community, and it doesn't matter what school you go to. There is all sorts of communities, and so I think a lot of people, they get to college, it's a little bit away from home, but when they get home, they get praised from their parents for getting good grades, for going to college. You know, they're so proud because their kids going to school, but they're far away. They get to party, have a good time. And then before you know it, okay, those 4 years are done. Now I'm about to have to start paying for everything. I'm leaving my friends. I'm leaving this town that I'm now love because I have all these, spots that I like to hang out with. And and now I have to go move off and get a job because most of the time college towns don't have the jobs that you're looking, unless you go work for the college, which some people that I'm talking about do that as well. They're like, you know what, I love this school so much, I'll go work there. But no, I think there's a lot of comfort all around to where it's a very comfortable environment. It's like I don't want to leave because this is just very comfortable for me.
That's interesting that you said that because you're right. I think some people do peak in college, and you've seen those. I don't know. You can tell the type, but they're those frat bros. It's like, oh man, back in my fraternity, and like their best
That's
days
all
were
they want to talk about.
yeah,
Yeah.
all they want to talk about. And it's like, oh, let's call all the guys up and let's go back to the old stomping grounds and like this and it's
Right.
like that's all when I was something in when I
Kappa
rushed
Delta
in my
Pi.
sorority or whatever, it's like and that's fine, like you should, but like
Like if you want to do that, that's cool.
mhm,
It's just one of those things. We're more talking about you never move on from that, right? Like you
yeah,
could be I've seen the people who are 45 still going back to their, whatever reunions, and they're still trying to drink each other under the table because they think that that's cool or whatever. And it's like,
yeah.
guys, y'all have kids who are about to be grown and in college themselves. Some people, I've even seen parents on college weekends, like over at Tech, you see when it's whatever, like family weekend or whatever, and all the families come into town. It's like I've seen some people at the freaking Red Robin, kids with dads going pound for pound trying to like outdrink each other. And it's just like, listen, I know you're in college like for the weekend, but please, like,
Yeah, and that's
it's
just kind of
interesting.
like, and both Micah and I have the same mentality. My mentality is my best days are ahead of me, not
Oh,
behind me. And you
absolutely.
have to have that mentality because, like, if you don't, you'll stop, and
Yeah.
you gotta always have that mentality. My best days are ahead of me, like. But then again, too, you can get in the trap of like not realizing or appreciating the good old days when you're in
While
them.
they're here. But I think a lot of what we're talking about is the opposite end of the spectrum, where a lot of people are like, "Oh, I didn't see the good old days while I was in it," and they're just trying to relive it however
Mhm.
they can. And it's like, okay, why can't you make it out of? And then they miss the good old days that they're currently in because they looking behind them.
Yeah.
So it's like it's one of those things. And plus, I'll tell you this much about the past. If you look into the past, there's so many times that I look back and go, "Oh yeah, those are good times." And I'm like, "Bro, I was broke as a joke. I was
Yeah.
stressed out to the nines. I had so many problems, but you don't remember any of that stuff. You just remember like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't a stressful time. I didn't have this and this and this going on." It's like, "Yes, it was. It was very stressful."
Yep, that was a long,
Anyways, yeah,
discussion
that was a
about why I
long
wanna
first
go back to
question.
college.
Right.
But it's good. My
There you
question,
go.
you kinda hinted to it, that you're in the IT world. I'm not gonna talk about anything currently because of the nature of your job, but what is either the dumbest or the most frustrating question you've gotten in IT?
Okay, so this has to go back to the state of Georgia service desk. So I worked for the state employees of the state of Georgia. And weirdly enough, so it was, if you've heard other episodes of the podcast, Chris and I used to live in Georgia. I was currently living in Texas, in Austin, Texas, of all places. And this company just happened to have so I was talking to people like from Augusta, from places that, you know, I remember talking to this one lady. I was just like, "You ever been to Harbor Inn, the seafood place?" She's like, "Oh yeah, me and my family love that place." You know, it closed down, right? And we're like sitting there gossiping about town. Anyways, so I think probably the dumbest one. It would always come out of the prison system, man. Like shout out to them prison guards out in the middle of nowhere in Georgia, but they had no idea what was going on with some computers, right? And so the thing was, if you had to have an outage or something like that, you had to have certain information to take down so that the technicians can start fixing it. You're kind of that bridge. They call you and say, "Hey, this is all down," and you got to ask all this information. And so that's always a fun little task. And so for me, the only thing for an IT person, and I hope this isn't too technical, but we've all seen the little command prompt, right? Like the little black screen where you could type something in. And so we would ask people to go there and you would type in just simply IP config and we would just spell it out for them. It's all one word. And so I would say IP config, spell that out for me. And the and I understand for some people that is a little difficult, but the line that I got from this one lady was just classic. She was fighting me every step of the way. She didn't want to do anything. She just wants you to get into her computer and fix it. Now the problem is when you don't have internet, you can't do anything. Like there's nothing you can do. And so type IP config. She goes, "Sir, I don't know that level of coding." That was the line that I got. And it's like, okay, that's not coding, ma'am. That's just one word of IP config. Do me a favor. And sometimes you can get some error codes from opening up your browser, like Google Chrome or things like that. And so I said, "Hey, can you open up your web browser for me?" And she did not know what a web browser was. She was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And like, I had to walk her through like Google Chrome, Internet Explorer. And like, it took me going down to the icon of like, it looks like a little green with a yellow. And then like for the Internet Explorer at the time, because this is when Internet Explorer was a thing, it's like it's a little I and an E with like a little swirly around it, and like trying to explain it to her. And it's just some guard in the middle of Georgia in a tower somewhere who locked herself out of her computer or not locked herself out of her computer, but like that could be one of the things. But this time it was, the whole internet went down. And like that is a problem because some prisons in Georgia, they be using the internet to like open up the gates and stuff like that. Like they have like so
No
like if the
way.
internet goes down, like some stuff could be a little bit
That's not good.
fishy. So it's one of those things of like you got to understand this information. But I think probably the craziest things were not IT related with that job and again, it was with the prison system because you'd be like, "Yeah, I locked myself out. I'm sorry, let me get into better character. Yeah, I locked myself out. My name is Lee Miller." That's Lee Lee. And it's just like, I think I know how to spell Lee. I
What's the
appreciate you.
craziest thing you saw?
Craziest thing I saw or craziest thing I heard?
You heard.
Craziest thing I heard was a full on like inmate brawl. And that was one of those things to where the only way I could tell what was going on is because she was on the phone 1 minute and then she was off the phone the next, and you just hear like scuffling. You just hear like, stop it right now. It's like, get off the ground. And then
Hey, y'all settle down without that racket.
and then all of a sudden, like a few minutes later, you hear a few guards come into the room where the phone is, and the phone is still like off the hook, I guess, or whatever. And they're like, "So what happened was inmate Jones and inmate Miller got to a fight, and then what ended up happening is inmate Tilson, he come over there." And then like they're just talking about the whole thing, and I'm just like, "Hello," because I can't hang up. So I'm like, "Hello." And then the other one was the lady called me from the prison infirmary. She was like a nurse, and she needed to log in like quickly because she, in order to get their prescriptions and things out, like she had to get into the computer and she was locked out. And she was like, can you, and so like, I'm rushing this. And in the background, I will save you the, and censor the words, but somebody was screaming quite loud profanities. And then he heard somebody in the background. You could tell it was an officer or somebody. And he goes, calm down, calm down. If you just tell me what happened, like we can get to the bottom of this. And he goes, I was effing stabbed. That's what happened. And like, I mean, he was just like so mad and he was just screaming and yelling. And right about the time he was like, I was effing stabbed. She goes, yeah, if we could hurry, that would be great. And like, you could tell she was just like nervous and she's like, and she was probably trying to get him like pain meds or something, right? I mean, I don't know. But, and then in the background, you hear, I love you, Georgia. I really do. But y'all love to gossip. So you'd be hearing like gossiping. So like all that's going on. And then I hear two ladies list like, well, we ran out of whatever this medication's going to be. It's like, well, they're going to be out for the weekend because we ain't getting nothing till Monday. Like, you hear like all this stuff on the phone. It's like, you never know what you're going to get on that next phone call. But those are some of the funniest one. I told some of my friends up there, like, we should write a book, like collectively, of all the phone calls, because you just get some. Well, I can't tell you that one. Never mind.
You should.
I can't say the full name on the podcast. That's not good.
You should do kind of. There's a page on Instagram called the Youth Group Chronicles, and they talk about the craziest thing that happened in the youth group. You guys should like make a channel like the IT Chronicles,
call center Chronicles.
Yeah, like I feel like that page would probably blow up because it'd be like
pop
people
off,
could just send in their stories and you guys could just read them. That'd be really cool.
Heck yeah. Because I mean, there's got to be a ton of them. I mean, every day you would come out with multiple of just like, oh my gosh. And then you have your really good days where everything flows really smoothly. And then you have some where it's just like back to back of like, are these people serious? Are they like, there are some times where people are so dumb. You're just like, are you messing with me right now? Like, please tell me you're messing with me. I think he's messing with me on the other end. Last thing about call center antics. We used to do, or at least I used to do this. They would tell me accents to try to hold for the entire thing. And of course I have my regular repertoire, but they loved the country one. They loved, and especially because you're talking to people from Georgia. So like you're matching their energy almost. And so after all the managers would leave at 5, sometimes I'd pull some overtime and they would love that because they'd go, oh yeah, we're going to, and because the calls would slow way down. So it'd be like 1 or 2. You'd put it on speaker for everybody to hear. So everybody would kind of pile around and you would hear. And so call comes in and it's me and they're like, yeah, be as country as you possibly can. And I'm like, thank you for calling State of Georgia Service Desk. This is Samuel. What's your first and last name? And this lady on the other end, I thought she was going to be some podunk country bumpkin, whatever. She goes, oh yes, I'm Dr. Blackwell. And she was like from, I don't know, very high up position with an organization called DBHD. It's like debilitative health service. I don't know, but it's like super high up neurospecialist lady, like super high up. And bro, it was a 2-hour problem. And I had to hold a country accent that entire time. And like, there were times where I swear she was on to me because she would like laugh. And like, it's just like, I can't, and like, it was a very in-depth problem. And I had to be like, all right, so what we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to take Outlook. I'm going to have to do that. And I'm going to have to rebuild your profile. All right. Because right now it's corrupt. And that's the biggest problem we're having. And like, she held it for the longest time, but there was times where she cracked up and like, I think she probably knew, but I held the entire phone call. And by the end of it, just everybody was just like, dang, like that was pretty wild. So there is antics like that. Anyways, you ready for your next question after another long question and answer there?
I'm here for the stories, bro. Those were great stories.
Yeah. All right. So if you could be a wrestler and shoot up to the WWE, so like if you're the wrestler, you shoot up to WWE, like you already just have the natural ability for some odd reason. You're like God's prodigy of whatever of wrestling here. Like that's you. Basically, you shoot up WWE. What's your wrestler name first? I got a few questions here.
Easy. I'm the Hebrew Hammer.
You're gonna go with that? That's the
Yes.
one you're going with?
I'm the Hebrew
Okay.
Hammer, and I'm thinking at first I'm gonna be like a bad guy, right?
Well, see,
And
hold on. That was my next question. I was gonna go hero or heel. That's the next
I'll be a
question.
bad guy, and I'll like come in. I'm gonna like have my beard, and like I'm gonna paint my face, and then I'm gonna wear like the prayer shawl thing over my head, and I'll like come in with that. But I'm not gonna do like the typical. But yeah, and then I'm gonna have a tag team partner. I don't know who that's gonna be, but our tag team name will be the Sons of Thunder.
Okay, that's
Yep.
good stuff.
Well, my signature move, you know what my signature move is
Yeah,
gonna
that's what
be?
I was gonna say. Is what's your finisher or what's your signature move?
It's either two. It's gonna be the hammer drop. Okay, so that's kind of like a like kind of an elbow drop type deal, or it's gonna be the spinning dreidel. So what how that looks is I'm gonna take the guy and I'm gonna spin him around like a couple times and then body slam him.
Spinning dreidel. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked
I'm not
about it,
trying to
but
offend
listen,
any Jewish people out there. I legitimately want that wrestler name.
listen. This man would love to be Jewish. If he was Jewish, like he would gladly accept that.
Dude, I'm gonna potentially take a 23andMe because I think I partly am.
You think you are?
Apparently, apparently there was a big Jewish population in France. Like, so I'm gonna check
Listen, man, the beard and I
the
don't
nose.
know. Yeah,
Just say
there's
it.
that.
And I'm
Is what it
short.
is. You Hebrew hammer, you. All right.
Hey, there you go. All right.
All right,
Kind of
man.
switching gears. And we talked about this 2 episodes ago, kind of about like ADD or ADHD and like being overstimulated. You kind of talked about how like for you, in order for you to eat, like you have to be done with your day, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
right, right.
eating is. Is there any other weird ticks or things that like set you off that maybe would not be considered normal or like a weird tick?
And there's other things that like showers for one is that is when I'm done with everything or at the beginning of the day. Like that's either for the beginning of the day or when I'm done with the day. That is a wind up or wind down activity. I don't know how showers could be interchangeable like that, but it can be. The biggest thing for me, there's a lot of really small things. I noticed like I obsess about a lot of kind of like you with wrestling. I wouldn't say that it's obsessive, but like it's borderline, right? Like you naturally want to learn and have a lot of knowledge on these things. Something that really irks me is when you have some knowledge and then some people be like, "Nah, you're wrong," but you know they're wrong. Like it's like, listen, man, I've been really up on this for like a long time, like obsessively. I don't know. It's kind of crazy, but it's one of those things to where it's like, listen, don't try to out nerd me on what I've nerded on here. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I am wrong. Like for instance, this is something that's kind of funny, but like on the Aviator Society page, which is now Trash Can Travel, there has been comments on there of like plane types. Like I'll say like, okay, this is a plane type. And there will be people that will try to argue and be like, oh no, like for instance, I'll be like, this is a 737-700. They'll be like, oh, are you sure it's not an 800? I'm like,
It's like I know what I'm talking.
really, and it's just like, do you want me to respond right now? Because and it's like half of me thinks like you just must be like trolling right now, like or something like that, because it's like it's obviously not, but at the same time it's those kind of things really irk me. But the other thing that I would say is really big is attention to detail. Like it's weird, sometimes I have problem with attention to detail, and I think that's just when I'm a little off mentally. But when people don't have necessary attention to detail, and I'm going to go into one example in particular, it's back to planes, man. It's back to planes. So when I'm watching planes, when I'm, it's called plane spotting, when you're out watching planes and a plane takes off and it's at night. So you have the red blinky light at the bottom, right? I'm just going to put it in layman's terms, red blinky light at the bottom and the two strobe lights on the end, the white lights that flash, right? I can't stand it when those are off kilter. And what I mean by that are like the timing is off. Typically what I like to see is that red light flash and then flash, red, But if it's like all intermixed and all wonky, it messes with me, man. I don't really understand it, but it's one of those things that frustrates me because what I've been told, and I'm not sure about this, if there's any aviation lovers who are in the enthusiasts out there that know better than me, this is one of the areas I don't know. What I've heard from technicians is that is an attention to detail thing. Like that is the way that you install the lights. There are ways that you could program it to where it's supposed to be a certain array, and that's just like you threw it in there and get this thing on out the door kind of thing. And I don't know if that's the frustration behind it, but I don't like those sort of things. And like even right now, it's got me making weird hand motions like, oh, I don't like that. Like it just messes with me. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
get it.
Mine is weird. So like if I'm taking a shower, it's not a problem, but I don't like water on my skin at all. So if it's raining out, I have to wear long sleeves, and I do not like water in my face. Like I
Really?
absolutely don't like, that's kind of like a trigger for me. Like I don't like water in my face or water on my head. If I'm jumping into a pool, like that's different, or if I'm taking a shower, that's different, but like if I were to get splashed on my face, like someone accidentally spilled water or something, I don't like that. Or someone were to spill water on me, like it's not like I'm afraid of water. I just don't like
Oh,
it.
I get it. Like, let me ask you this. Because we've never discussed this before. I never knew this about you, but I understand it as well. Is it kind of one of those things that like takes your breath away? Like that's the part that ticks me off. Like sometimes if like or at least that's what happens with me. Like say a splash of cold water happens, even if it's like a small bit of it's like ooh, like it kind of shocks you, but it like almost like takes your breath away for a second in a weird way. Is that kind of the same way
No,
that
it's
you get?
just like I
No?
just don't like it. And same thing with like lotions or like any I maybe it's textured things, but I don't like lotions or like I don't know, like washing my hands, that's soap, that's different. But like if like my hands are like gunky or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this is
Well,
like a personal
it's
preference, but I don't like corner pieces of brownies or like corner. I have to like have the middle.
that's what I was about to ask you. What about like texture of foods? Are there like a lot of are there foods that you're like I just straight can't eat? Because there's some people, for instance, like menudo is really big here in Texas, right? Like I find it personally good, but there are some people because it's intestines and it's like it's stomach, right?
Yeah, probably
I don't
not
know, but a
like
lot of people are like that's a
guacamole,
texture,
like
bad
that
texture.
kind of texture of stuff. It's kind of like I don't know, but I have a weird like tick with that. I don't know what my tick is. So it's like I have to have like everything like, and then even if it's like a video game or like a challenge, if I'm like failing or something, like I have to go back to a specific starting point in order for me to like move ahead. Does that make sense? Like it's like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
specific. And what's weird is, and again, I don't know if this is like, I've never been diagnosed with on the spectrum ADHD. I have my theories, but like even when I was a baby, like when I was learning to walk, like when I would fall down, I would have to go back to the exact same spot to start again. Like I couldn't just pick up where I left off. Like, you know what I mean? Like I
yeah.
had to go back to the
No,
original starting point and then so I that's a weird tick. Like it's weird.
and then we've kind of talked about this. You're talking about ADHD and things like that. Well, I think I'm ADHD, and I don't know if you experience this too. So I feel like my mind, and I'm going to sound like Shrek, layers. It's all about but my mind runs in layers. Like there are different layers of things going on. But sure, there are things on the forefront of my mind, but there could be nine things in the background. Like think about it in a computer and like a browser term, right? I could have all these tabs open, right? I could be working on one actively, but there's all these things actively going on at the same time. I think for me, it's hard because my mind jumps because there are nine things that are going on all at one time. My mind jumps from one thing to the other so frequently to where I am now working on 9 things at one time because I'm not actively focusing. So, like, for instance, I can even tell you an example from today. Today, I was writing up some of these questions for the podcast. Like, I was thinking about some of these questions from the podcast. Something else that's on my mind is doing the budget for this next mid-month. Like, I do mid-month budgets, like every half of the month I do a budget. And so I'm kind of already preparing for that. And I was thinking about some different expenses because even throughout the month, I'm writing down expenses that I can see that are coming up and things like that. So there was that going on. I have trash can travel. Each day I post a story about a different flight track that's going on. So mentally, I'm like, okay, where are we going from today to today? Are we going from Denver to, because like I do enjoy that, right? But you see what I'm saying, right? And before I know it, I've opened up Canva. I've already made part of it. Now I need to go over to Flight Radar, get the rest of the details from Flight Radar to come back over here. And I go, okay, before I go to Flight Radar, let me go back over to this other task. And before you know it, I am embedded in 5 different tasks in 5 different places. That's why I think I'm ADHD, because you see how convoluted that all became. And it's like, there's not a lot of that makes sense, but it makes sense to me. Like, and I know exactly where I'm at everywhere, but I've also noticed that it causes me problems. So it can be hard.
Yeah, it's kind of like and I'll give you an example. Mine is kind of that, like everything is woven together. So you remember in The Office when Michael Scott calls Daryl Mr. Rogers?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr.
Mr. Rogers'
Rogers.
neighborhood.
And then he's
Mr.
like,
Rogers.
and then it's like, how do you get Mr. Rogers? It's like Daryl Philbin, Regis Philbin, Reg, Rogers,
Mr.
Mr.
Rogers.
Rogers, and that's how my mind thinks, like, legitimately,
Exactly.
like, when I'm thinking about
Exactly.
that, like, if I see on your sign Washington, DC, my mind's gonna be thinking, "Okay, the Capitol. Okay, now for some reason, my mind thinks about George W. Bush." Then in my mind thinks about the Nike shoes that I used to have that I wrote George W. Bush on, and then I'm gonna tell you the story randomly about when I wrote George W. Bush on my shoes, and you may be like, why did you just bring up that was randomly? But that's where my mind like goes to. So
And see, it's the same thing, bro. I totally get you. Like right behind you, you got an action figure of Randy Orton, right? Then I
that's
think about, oh well, I'm sitting here looking, I'm thinking of Randy Orton. Anyways, so if it still works though, if my mind is thinking about Randy Orton, right? Then I'm like, wasn't there that guy Kyle Orton? Yeah, he was the quarterback for the Broncos. Then he got traded to the Bears. It's like the Bears never really had a quarterback. It's like they've kind of sucked this year. Before you know it, you're on this like
yeah, you're
trail,
like
and it
like
only took
5
you 2 seconds.
down, like and
Right.
like I hate to like be this way and I need to be better. And I really try to be this way with my wife, but when I'm talking to other people, do you ever like when you're talking to people like you're there and you're like but like your you're like your eye catches
Exactly.
everything
Yeah.
around, like if something little happens, like your eye is catching it. And I used to get in trouble with my ex about because she's like, "Are you looking at?" And I'm like, "No, like literally everything is catching
Everything's
my
catching
attention."
my eye. Everything's catching my eye. And weirdly enough, that's opening another tab, because that tab, now you're going and you're looking at what's going on with this. And that's something that you're focused on. Because for me, if I'm focused on that one thing, yes, I can like not focus on it for a minute, but it's still there. Like I'm still kind of weirdly thinking about it. It's still, I don't know, it's still a thing. And
Now,
so go ahead.
Now I know this is like it's your turn to ask a question, but while we're still on this topic, like I've noticed with people that kind of grew up and millennials and a little bit like almost Gen Z, kind of people that grew up in like the late 80s, early 90s. I've heard and maybe it's just because it's been more widely um brought attention to, but I feel like everyone our age feels like they're on the spectrum or have ADHD in some way. And like I know I've seen the memes. It was like if you're used to be like in the gifted and talented program, now like you drink Red Bulls, you suffer from ADHD, all this stuff. So do you think my conspiracy theory is maybe it had to do with some of the vaccinations we got? Maybe it's also too like maybe just the spectrum is so wide now that everyone's on the spectrum in some way, shape, or form. But why do you think like so many millennials our age like have those issues? Because I noticed that.
So let's take it one step deeper. What if in the way our society was set up? So we were kind of talking about college and the way that college was pushed really, really hard, and how some of these educational programs, because I remember, we were prime proponents of going through elementary school, middle school, with No Child Left Behind. So a lot of things ended up changing, and a lot of things, mindsets changed, a lot of, curriculums changed, things like that. And so if we're being real, man, I think part of it, if you were gifted in things like that, I think it was a dual-edged sword. So I'm going to take it to another country. I've got a buddy of mine. His name's Ryan. Super cool guy. He was in the military. He spent some time in Korea. And did you know the suicide rate in Korea is quite large? Like, I hate to go dark, but it's quite large. But reason being is the pressure that was put on them. And it is literally, if you're not doing if you don't have a good job, if you're a trash man, you dishonor your family. Like, if you're not getting a load of education, you are dishonoring it. Like, it is a massive deal. So many people, they had to install these fences and all this stuff on this mountain. I don't remember which mountain, forgive me, because people were throwing themselves off left and right because it was a problem. Now, I'm not saying that's happened. I think it's definitely to a lesser degree here, but I think maybe these are the side effects that we're starting to see because of it. Maybe a lot of these pressures, because the gifted kids, I've been into some gifted classes, and essentially what happens is they tell you, you're great, you're going to be the next future generation's best next thing. But there was not a lot of guidance on how to do that. And so there is a lot of pressure of, you get out here and you go, okay, well, I'm supposed to be the next best thing, but you don't even know what the heck you want to do. So of course that's going to stress you out. And of course you're going to feel like a failure. And of course you're going to feel all these things. And I think that it's necessarily autism or ADHD or things like that? To be real, I think a lot of the habits that we have gained along the way, study habits, there's a lot of people that I know that's like, man, it's finals week, we're popping Adderall left and right. And don't think that doing stuff like that is not going to get you to a place where you have attention deficit or something like that, because anything that makes you over attention is messing with the chemicals in your brain. So I think a lot of that, I'm not saying it's just for the people that's done Adderall, but I'm saying, like, it's one of those things. I've known so many people who will stay up all night to study. I've known so many people who do unhealthy things to be the next best thing. Just come on the other end and go, I don't know what I'm doing, because what am I supposed to be doing? Because I was told I could do anything. So what are we supposed to do? And so I think that definitely plays a role into it. And I know that was really deep, but I think that has something to do with it as well.
And again, that makes sense, because you look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they can be on their iPad, watch a movie, and be doing something else all the same. And that's normal. It's just no, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just Gen
Yeah.
Z, that's just Gen Alpha. But for millennials, it's like, hey, you have to focus. And even like, so and this is a big rabbit trail, but like, even when I first started in kids ministry, like the first thing they would tell you, like typical kids ministry is like, okay, they're all sitting down, they're quiet, they have their hands folded, nobody's talking. But like, trainings have come out, it's like, no, we can't do kids ministry the same anymore, because that's not how kids are learning. Like, kids are different. Like, so trying to adapt to the way they learn, but that makes sense. So
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason that I say that is because I we can go in, here's a whole nother episode idea, Christopher. Going through school with supposed ADHD, because we'll get an official diagnosis and we'll do that episode, right? But
yeah.
no, it's one of those things to where I did have a lot of struggles in school because of focus and attention issues. But we can go into something all that later, because that could be a whole episode. All right, you ready for our next question?
Yeah, we'll shift off that topic.
Okay, I mean, that's one you can go into all day, I feel like. So this is one like an if you had to live without one of these, which one would it be? Car or hot water? So like, you had to give up your car or hot water. What are you doing? You taking cold showers, or you're not driving?
Probably not driving.
Probably
Maybe.
not driving.
I
Like,
don't know.
you can't do cold water. You're like, I'm
I
not
guess
doing
I
cold water.
could, man. I guess I could. I don't know. I
Well,
really like
here's the
hot water.
question. Basically, what we're saying is, would you take the bus to have
Oh
hot
yeah, I take the
showers?
bus. Heck yeah.
You take the bus.
If there's public transportation, yeah, I don't have a problem taking the bus.
Okay, but it's inconsistent routes, and it's like you got to take 4 stops.
See, now I feel like you're
And
changing the rules.
I
Get
don't
me
know.
to say hot water, but yeah, nah. Would you would take cold showers if you could still have your car?
Yeah, I like the freedom of having a car, man. I would take cold showers.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Cold showers, they're uncomfortable, but I don't know if you know this. After football, I used to take cold showers after every all practice and stuff like that. It was mainly just because it was so stinking hot, and you just.
Yeah.
So I would start off the water kind of lukewarm, and then when you can get it to where you can stand it, not be like I hate it when you step into it and it's freezing. But like if you kind of gradually do it. Anyways, all right. What's the next one? That was like a super short one compared to the rest of the questions we asked.
What is one TV show that you cannot stand?
There's a lot of them, man.
Just name a couple of them.
So the Kardashians is one of them.
I knew you
can't stand. There's a lot of MTV programming. Like basically, you can say MTV in a nutshell, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty much on board with that. And mainly a lot of these shows is because I had to watch them with my ex, and thank God my wife now, like she likes watching some of this stuff, but like she don't force me to watch this stuff, so it's okay. But there's like the Kardashians. I know Jersey Shore is not as big as it was, or I don't think it is on anymore. I don't even know, but couldn't stand that stuff. And then the other one, I can't stand soap operas. Like there's something about a soap opera that like you can always tell when a soap opera is on. Like I could turn that TV on right now and it's a soap opera. I could tell you in 0.2 seconds. Like you don't have to say a word. It's about like the cinema of it, like the camera angles. Like I swear they use the same cameras from the 80s. That's why it looks like it does, and the same sets from the 80s because it's just like it has a look. The actors look the same. Like it's like soap opera. You could tell. The one that I can't stand the most is Days of Our Lives. I had to every day, Christopher. That was the days of my life. I had to watch that.
You had to watch that with your ex or watch that with your grandparents?
With my ex. With my grandparents, I had to watch General Hospital. That was a different one.
Oh, your ex liked her stories, her telenovelas?
Oh, except it was the English telenovelas. But no, it was just always horrible stuff. And funny enough, so watch that. And the problem was, and guys, you're gonna rag on me, but you all done it for your woman too. I had to keep up with this stuff too. She wanted to talk about it. Like it's not one of those things you had to watch it. No, you got to keep up with it. And so, for any dude who's had to date a Latina, especially a white boy who's dated a Latina, like it's one of those things. It's not just like you don't listen. It's a problem. It's like you didn't listen. The next thing you know, you got like a knife to your throat or something. So you don't want to mess with nobody. So I end up watching
that way.
Not all Latina ladies are that way, just the ones that I dealt with.
Yeah, I had to watch. I had to keep up with Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star and all that stuff.
Oh man.
So that was
Lord.
tough, and I was just like, yeah. And then what was the other one? Was it Charles something?
James Charles.
Yeah, that guy.
I don't. So my wife talked about that with her friends a ton. I didn't really know a ton about that, but like she talked about that. I'm sorry, had to go through that. The only thing about Days of Our Lives that I remember is having to keep up with that ish. And then a few years later, I'm sitting in Walmart at the automotive center getting my tires redone. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's good. Anyway, so was sitting there. We were there for hours, and Days of Our Lives is on the TV there. And so I'm sitting it. And this dude who, like at this point, I had broken up with this girl like 3-4 years beforehand. And at this point, this dude walks out and it's just like, this dude was supposed to be dead from like way back then. And I just remember being in Walmart being like, oh, heck no. Heck no. It's like, Roger's back? He's supposed to be dead. It's like he was dead 4 years ago. He fell off a cliff. There ain't no way that man came back. And I was like mad. Like I was like having to like, I didn't say any of that out loud, but I'm like, oh heck no. I was like, not Roger. He's like, that boy did not come back. He fell off a cliff on his car. Like his car blew up. Like that's the whole story. Like they ain't no coming back from that. And yeah. I just remember being like that and being like, that's how you know that I had to pay attention way too much to that show right there.
That's
Mm-mm-mm.
mine would be as much as you like Seinfeld. Couldn't
You like
stand
Seinfeld?
Seinfeld. Not crazy about
So
it.
I liked it a lot more earlier in life. Now I'm not as big of it. Like I think it's some of the characters that make it. Like Kramer's funny, George Costanza's funny. It's got Ben Stiller's dad, Jerry
Jerry
Stiller, in
Stiller.
it. And
Yeah,
so
he
like
was
Jerry
funny.
Stiller is like George Costanza's dad is pretty funny. Like there are funny aspects to it, but like Jerry himself and Elaine, like they're
Not
not very
funny.
funny. Like it's kind of the side characters that are the funny bits, I feel like. But
Not crazy about Friends. Not
no,
crazy. I can
I
never
don't
get
like
into that
Friends.
show and just don't like it. Any Real Housewives, dude, that show,
No.
like, y'all are stupid. Like, y'all should just not be friends. Kind of same Kardashians, like, no.
I had to
Uh,
watch the what was that one? Vanderpump, whatever. Yeah, I had to watch that
whatever
one.
that is. Oh,
I didn't like that one.
oh, I think The Bachelor and The Bachelorette's really
Oh
stupid.
God. Yeah, no, man.
We talked about
Listen.
that on What Fries My Donuts. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
if any other man was doing this, like, he would be canceled, but, like,
he would be canceled so fast. And like something I'm gonna and if my grandmother's watching, yeah, I'm calling you out on this one. My grandmother would watch The Bachelor, and she's a fairly pious woman who really be, making sure other people knows that you living right or wrong. And like, but she loves watching The Bachelor or Bachelorette. And like on that show, they'd be having like the love shack where it's like, who are you going to choose to go to the love shack and spend the night with? And I'm just like, oh, that ain't Christian. I remember telling her one time, I was like, oh, yeah, well, that's not very godlike of them to do that. Aren't they only supposed to be courting? And she was just like, well, we just don't think about those aspects of the show. They're just going in there to talk and get to know each other. Whatever, bro. It's like really and truly, they're just going in there for catering because it's all a show. But it's like we're looking at the principles of
maybe,
it. It's like if we're looking
maybe.
at the principles of it here. So it's like I can't stand any of that stuff. Um, it's like, but give me some good Maury, Jerry Springer. We're good. We're good.
Yep. I got one more question. It's your turn to ask a question, but I got one more question left. So, but go for it.
Okay. So just kind of a prelude. I'm not going to give too many details, but Chris and I are about to take a very long drive here at some point. And so it made me think about this question. What is the longest straight drive that you've ever had? Like, was that driving out to Texas or have you had a longer drive? And I'm not talking about like, okay, one day straight. I'm talking about like the entire trip. Like, how long did you drive
It would probably
consecutively? Like, didn't take
either
days off.
that, moving out to Texas, or when I had to drive back to visit my mom because I did that drive a couple of years ago. That was long,
Yeah, which was a very long one.
or which was probably about 18 hours. And then I'm not sure how long it took for us to get to Washington, D.C., but that took a couple of days. So I would say one of those three. But you went on like a round trip, like drive around the whole country almost, kind of, right?
Kind of. It was from the north to the south. I went from New York, like New York City, all the way back to Lubbock, Texas. That was quite a long way. And so that was quite interesting. That one took 3 days. And I was driving about 10 hours a day. I just remember the first day we went from New York and made it all the way to Virginia. And bro, I kid you not, man, we pulled into Virginia, and this was a place called I don't remember where it was called. I could probably tell you Charlestonville or something. I don't remember. It was something like that.
Charlottesville?
No, not Charlottesville. It's something else. I'll think about it. It's where James Madison University is because it was like right around the corner. Anyways, so we pull in and it's like 2 a.m. because the guy that I'm traveling with did not have a plan. Like basically he's just like, we're driving from New York back. And being young, you're like, okay, that's fine. We got a rental car. Like we'll find places, right? And so the only hotel that we could find with vacancy at 1, 2 a.m. was the Motel 6. And it was right on the side of the road. And it was very, very sketchy. And so we went inside. First of all, there was like a lady selling something like 2 rooms down. and she was like sitting on our porch,
Was it
because this is one of those motel that had like the doors are all on the outside and it's got like the 2 levels here, and so like people kept coming up back and forth to her and whatnot, and reason being is because we sat in the parking lot like checking the place out because we didn't want to take our stuff out potentially if it was going to be too sketchy. And like this lady was definitely selling some stuff, but we decided it's late at night. I don't care as long as she's like not bothering us and like they ain't nobody get into a shootout. So like let's go in there. And so we went, and I just remember like putting the chair up under the door. Like I was like, I ain't trusting none of this stuff, bro. Like I ain't trusting none of this. And so everything went fine, went to sleep, woke up. And like the first thing I did when I woke up is I looked outside and like was looking, and bro, there was like this giant rat. And I was like, what the heck is that out there? And it was a big behind rat. And I was like, bro, and I was like talking to the guy over here, and he was still asleep in bed. I was like, dude, you got to come see this. This is like a big behind rat. Like I was freaking out because I was like, dude, I'm not going outside. That's a massive, like it's like a beaver sized rat. Like it was huge.
For sure it wasn't a possum?
No, bro, look it up. They have a thing called nutria up there, and they're like giant rats. Like they're huge. Like I'm sure, ask your wife about it. She's from up that way. She probably knows about them. Like they're massive behind rats. And like it was like sitting out front of this Motel 6, and bro, I was so ready to leave Virginia. I was like, get me out of Virginia. It's like we got people selling meth next door. We got the big behind rats up here. Anyways, so like that was probably the craziest thing that happened. The rest of it was pretty uneventful, but it was just I just remember waking up that next morning going, is that a rat? Is that a rat outside? And yeah, that was.
I know a couple rats that size. One starts with a name. No, I'm just kidding. Um, dude, and maybe this is like, I'm not a dad yet, but maybe this is like my inner dad era. But like, I have to like plan stuff out. If we're going on a road trip, like, all right, this is where we're stopping. Like,
Oh yeah.
I can kind of gauge, like, okay, this is where we're gonna stop for gas. Like, because at the same time, I'm like, I got when it's just me, like, I don't care. But like, I got my wife with me. Like, if I'm traveling with other people, I'm like, okay, we're gonna stop in areas that I know it's like, all right,
especially if you're traveling through the South. If you've never traveled through the deep South, and I'm not talking about particular parts of the South, there are parts of the South that are very nice, but there are some parts of the South that's like, if you don't know what you're doing, you will get yourself robbed or shot. So you really need to be safe. And so I totally get what you're saying. I mean, shoot, I kind of alluded to it. We're going to take a long road trip here pretty soon. I mean, I've already looked this route up. I don't know how many times. I've gauged kind of, okay, this first day is going to be this. And like, I mean, I've tried to gauge a lot of this crap out too. It's one of those things. I feel that same way. And it's the same thing about like flying. Day before flying, like I'm checking those flights, I'm checking the statuses. I've even before looked at airport maps to be like, all right, where's my connection from this terminal to this terminal, and how do I get there if I've never been there before? Like I'm making sure I know what's going on.
you're like, come here, we're gonna check the board.
Bring it here. Let's go.
That's kind of maybe a sore spot because Micah's parental unit made him check the board like every 5 minutes.
God,
like,
I hated that.
to make sure the flight didn't change. And now they'll like update you on your phone. But like,
yeah, they'll update you on your phone. But even then, it's just like, bro, that's what we got a 2-hour layover for. The plane before the plane ain't even here. It's like we could go do something, and then like an hour out, even 30 minutes before boarding, check the board, and then we still got 30 minutes to get somewhere before it boards. Like, hey, don't that make sense? Anyways, we're not going to debate time frames with. You remember that question earlier about what irks me that probably shouldn't?
Oh, I thought you were going to say about the rat.
ADHD.
I'm just kidding. This is my last question. And
all right.
Micah has had a lot of cars. I have too. And I know probably which one I know you're going to say. Which one was your favorite car that you had?
It's going to be that white Dodge pickup. So, bro, I was so proud of that truck. So, the first truck that I had was that $650 Isuzu pickup truck. Like literally that's the make and model. If you look it up, it is a Isuzu pickup truck. Like they didn't even bother to name it. And $650, that thing couldn't even go up to 60. Like it was a piece of crap. And for one thing, it was also a manual. So, it was a manual. So getting out to Texas and buying this one, I know you like to be like Walker Texas Ranger, but this was my ultimate Walker Texas Ranger truck because he had like the Dodge Ram like that was white with except it had like the bar with the flashy lights.
Yeah, like AC lights on it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And it's just like that. It's like I kind of was like, oh yeah, like we could have this cool truck. Um, but it definitely was a step up, and I think a lot of it is just because it's got good memories in that truck. Like there was all sorts of fun stuff that happened in there. I was even telling my grandfather the other day, I was talking to him sitting there and we were talking about a story. You probably remember this one, Christopher. I think you remember it well. There was a certain mud pit that was between two dirt roads. And so, buddy of mine had this pretty nice 4x4 truck. So, like, he had an all wheel drive truck. And it started out with we wanted to go fishing. And around Lubbock, there are like these little playa lakes that you can go fishing. And according to their website, there was this playa lake that was like around the corner from his house. But no playa lake. It was a mud pit, is what it was. And there wasn't no fish in it at all. And so that buddy of mine was like, dude, let's go out to the mud pit and just like go mudding, like, because that was the thing to do. And so he goes out there in his truck's like, oh, yeah, we should do that. And so we go in his truck, have a good time. And he goes, bro, we should bring your truck back because it's, it's not that bad. My truck's only 2-wheel drive. He's like, it'll handle 2-wheel drive. The mud's not that bad. Like, it's not. This dude was an instigator. Okay. First and foremost. And so we're like, okay. So I bring that truck back. And I mean, I buried that thing down to the axle. Like, I buried that thing down to the axle. And so, next call, I don't remember why old fat cat couldn't go get his truck again. Like it was way over here or something. So we call Chris and we're like, hey, Chris, you got a truck. Can you help pull me out? Then what happened, Chris?
I got stuck too, right? Didn't I get stuck?
You almost got stuck. You almost got stuck. Like he came out there and his was only a 2-wheel drive as well. And so we had a plan. First of all, the strap we were using, we were trying to use like a ratchet strap. So it wasn't going to work, first of all. But second of all, we were like, okay, we're going to have Chris far enough out to where he's not stuck in the mud. And we were trying to do this whole thing. But anyways, like I just remember your tires just kept spinning and we just kept telling you like, don't stop. Because if you stop, like it's gonna. And so we end up just like getting you out of there. And come to find out, there was one of my customers from Cavender's, or not Cavender's, Boot Corral. We'll cut that out. Boot Corral came in there and, or like he pulls up in his dually and just starts like ragging on us. I just remember he was like ragging on us. I'm like, bro, are you going to help us? Or are you going to just like talk crap? And then finally he went out there with his chain and like got us out of the mud pit. Trust me, every time he came into the store, I always heard about it. Always heard about it.
I think Fat Cat just didn't want to get his truck dirty. I think he could have pulled you out of if he had all.
He probably could have.
His truck was the same size as the other guys. I think he just didn't want to help. So
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I remember almost. Yeah, but it was. I mean, it was a pretty good truck. Like, and for me, I always wanted a truck. I still do want a truck eventually one day, but they're so expensive. And
dude, especially in Texas, they're like 3 times more expensive in Texas than they are everywhere else.
So I got mine, which was a black Ford F-150. It was probably a 98. I think it was a 98.
That your favorite?
Huh?
Was that your favorite?
No, that's not my favorite. Oh, the Buick's obviously my favorite. I love that Buick because I didn't have any problems with it. But
I was about to say the black truck. Yeah. Anyways, go
black
ahead.
Truck had a lot of problems. Like the lock would get stuck sometimes, so like you better not leave your keys in there. But yeah, like you had an extended cab, like it was the perfect size. Like it was a pretty good truck for you. Like
yeah, no, it was awesome. Like the truck was really good. I don't know. I remember picking up a lot of chicks in that truck, like more than I did. I remember going on a lot of dates in that truck and then ended up meeting my wife and shortly then after getting rid of that truck. So,
what was wrong with it? Why did you have to get rid of it?
So the engine started going out. First that happened was the transmission went out and it cost me like $2,000 to replace it. So like I replaced it. And at this point, like whenever you would drive it, sometimes it would sound like popcorn, like the cylinders would just misfire. And so it wasn't that it was not running. Like it would still get up the highway speeds and do different things, but it would misfire quite a bit. And it was one of those things you could just tell the engine was dying. Like it was one of those things where it was just kind of slowly going down. And it was like, okay, it's going to be, I think it was like going to be a $3,000 replacement or something like that. And I was like, at the time, I was just like, I'm just going to put $3,000 into something else because the paint was peeling. Like it was just kind of to the point where I was just like, I'm ready to just get something else. And my buddy at the time, or the people who were my friends at the time, because this is when Chris and I had a hiatus in friendship. One of them had just bought a Scat Pack Dodge, you know, the type. And so he just bought that. And so like we were really kind of doing like, we were doing the street racing thing. And so my next car, I was like, I've always wanted to have a tuner. Like I always wanted to have like a rice burner tuner. I always did. And so I ended up buying a 96 Honda Del Sol, and it was rattle can green. It had the racing seats in it. And I remember, like, when I say it was green, it was like neon, ugly green. And I just remember I was so proud because I got a shift knob and it was a skull that was the same color green, like had that on there. And I thought I was so cool. I'm sure the neighbors were really pissed off because it had a regular exhaust to it, a really loud one. But then this buddy Fat Cat and I, we lifted up the rear end and was like, I bet you we could take that off and it would sound a lot better. And it did. It sounded like, instead of a rice burner, it sounded like a bass, like it sounded like really bassy. So when you would start it up, blah, 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 like it was like really loud. I'm sure the neighbors loved it. I'm sure. But then the engine went out on that one too. So,
There
but
you go.
anyways,
Yeah,
we've had plenty of cars.
Buick. I love the Buick so much. Just because, you know, when you pay cash or something and like you work real hard, like I had a lot of good memories in that car. Like it was my first car. The truck was all right. Like it was fine. Um, and then I had the Chevy Equinox. That thing was fine, but that thing had so many problems. I only had that thing for like 4 years.
Is that the one the radiator kept screwing up and all that
Yeah,
stuff?
like the head gasket blew twice.
Oh yeah.
We
Ooh,
replaced it the
okay.
first time, and then after that, we were like, "Yeah,
It's just
nah."
not worth it. Yeah.
And then I had my little Nissan Versa, which was cool. Then I had the Nissan Kicks, the white one, and now I have a new Nissan Kicks, which I very much enjoy that car. It's a good car. So
So I got to run. I'm going to run shortly through the full list here. Isuzu pickup truck. I had the Dodge Ram 1500, the white one. Then after that, I had the 96 Honda Del Sol, the rattle can green one. After that one blew, I bought a Hyundai Accent. It was like a 2000 Hyundai Accent from an Indian man named Rutvik, and it smelled like curry. So don't turn the AC on. Like all my friends at the time knew, like, don't turn the AC on in Micah's car because you will smell like curry for the next freaking day. That one, I bought that one for $800. The transmission blew out on that one, so I ended up getting rid of that one. I had a Honda Civic, a 2003 Honda Civic. That one was a stick shift. I had three to that point. I had three stick shifts, so I had a lot of manuals to that point. And then after that, I bought a 2010 Ford Fusion, the blue one, the one that you knew about. And then after the Fusion, is the one that I currently have now. So, which is a Honda. So it's been quite a bit, but like I said, I had a lot of stick shifts. I think half of my cars, or a little less than half of my cars, were manuals. So
there you go.
pretty wild.
Well, it's been great. Do you have one more last question, or you good to
Yeah,
wrap
I've got one. This one's a short one.
Okay.
Is there ever a sport or an activity that you've wanted to try? And I'm not talking about, maybe not sport, maybe more activities. So like scuba, snowboarding, skiing, water skiing. Like, is there anything that you're like, oh man,
Yeah,
that
we
sounds like
talked
it'd be
about
pretty fun to do?
parasailing,
Parasailing,
but honestly, like I think getting into archery, that'd be cool.
archery.
Like that's a
Yeah,
pretty like I don't think I'd do bow hunting, but like just shooting archery, it's pretty
yeah.
fun. I've done it a few times. I think that's fun. Um, Water skiing probably not because I don't have the best balance. So I don't know. Like I really do want to try like I know I'll probably wipe out, but like snowboarding or skiing, but I don't think I do that great. But parasailing, Parasailing or curling, dude. I've always wanted to get into
curling.
curling. Apparently,
I do too.
Apparently, my brother-in-law. I found this out when he was here. He's like head of the association of curling in his town. Like,
What?
he's really big into curling, and I'm just like,
Dude, I love curling. You know what's weird? That is like one of my weird sports. Like whenever
yeah, it
it's like
sounds
winter,
cool.
it's like winter sports comes on or like winter Olympics comes on. It's like I don't care about a lot of the other sports, but it's like curling. I'll watch some good curling. That's pretty dope.
Yeah,
We'll
I
have to
just
talk
want
about
one of
this
the
after
guys
that.
go-
That it shaves the ice.
Yeah.
No, that looks like a really cool job. I would want to try that. Snowboarding is one that's on my list. Again, I think I would probably break something, but like I think snowboarding would be pretty cool. I've wanted to try to do water skiing. I've wanted to try to do water skiing and just see. Um, but the other one that I've really wanted to try, so some people are like, oh man, it's kind of crazy. I want to try ice fishing, like not just fishing, but just ice fishing. I've heard you can make it really comfortable. Like I'm not just talking about like sitting over a ice hole and going like and freezing yourself off. Like I hear you could put like a nice enclosure over it and the ice is thick enough to where you can have like some sort of heat source and to where it's not freezing in there, right? And you can have snacks and whatnot. I mean, that's fine with me. That sounds like a good time.
Snowmobiling. I do want to go
That's
snowmobile or jet skis. I've never done jet skis. That sounds fun
I've done
too.
jet skis one time and I would love to do it again. Problem is I need more money. You know, Doughnut Box podcasters, trash can, TV OGs, we need more money to go jet skiing.
Well, speaking of all this stuff that we're doing, man, y'all should check out Trash Can Travel. Check that
Trash can travel.
channel out. And Micah definitely has some things that are coming up in the works that he's going to be
Yeah.
posting, alluding
Hey,
to some of the things we've talked about. But yeah, where else can they find us at?
over at the Trash Can Network, over on YouTube. If you want to search us over at Doughnut Box Podcast, that's GHDOUGHNUT podcast or box. I got to throw the box in there. Doughnut Box Podcast. But if you just want to put in donut like that, I've seen it come up with that. But just go ahead and put in Doughnut Box Podcast. It'll pop up there. Remember to like and subscribe us over there, over on Facebook at Trash Can Network over there as well. And yeah, we've got links linked up all over the place. So if you're viewing us through YouTube and you're like, hey man, I want to go look at Facebook, it's in our bio. So if you want to go check out that link, we've also got a link over to Instagram, things like that. Vice versa, if you guys are over on Spotify listening to us and you regularly see us on Facebook or anything like that, and you want to come find us, listen, it's all linked up. You can go. If you're interested in Trash Can Travel, that's also a link that's on there too. You can go be sent off over there and you can follow us on all different sources, all different places. It's all linked up, man. So come check us out.
Well, I think it's time for the Starship to take us out. I'm Chris.
And I'm Micah.
And this has been the Doughnut Box Podcast.
Yes, it has.